and welcome to episode 82 of the podcast. In this week's episode, we have some fantastic tips that every homeowner should know in an emergency within the plumbing and heating of your own home. We have some money saving tips on what to do if you need to call a plumber out this winter. And also, what should you do if you think you smell gas in your home? This and more in this week's episode. But first of all, here's my friend Sean to tell you a bit more about the podcast. Are you a new person coming into plumbing and heating? Are you a homeowner that likes a bit of DIY? Or are you a business owner and want a bit more knowledge before you make some decisions on your plumbing and heating? Stay tuned to the podcast and hopefully we'll be able to help you out with some of your questions. And thank you very much, guys. So this time of year, we get a lot of calls regarding radiators. So not a lot of people have underfloor heating. Most people have the traditional radiators on the wall sort of plumbing, whether it's from a combination boiler, whether it's from a system boiler where you've got some tanks and a pump, or you've got tanks in the loft. But those sort of what we call like wet rad heating that runs around your home. So we have a lot of call outs for heating this time of year, and we have a lot of questions come in, and on the podcast I do like to answer listeners' questions. So we've had some more come in about radiators. I don't know if they're sort of newcomers onto the channel, but not a problem at all. So on a radiator, water will flow from one side out to the other, and the valves on each side of the radiator, whether you've got two lock shields, sort of like water restrictor type valves, or you have like a thermostat valve with the twiddly top and a lock shield on the other, doesn't really matter. Whether both come in at the bottom, one comes in at the top. I have seen them both coming in from the top, but sort of the most economical way actually is one at the top, one at the bottom, but most of us have them both coming in at the bottom. That's the most common way, and it works quite efficiently. It's slightly more efficient if you have one higher than the other, but I'll go into that in another podcast. So there's a couple of things. There's a bit of a myth on the internet. So we start talking about sludge and a dirty heating system, and yes, that can cause big cold spots at the bottom of the radiator. So generally, if you've got a sealed heating system where you've got a pressure gauge and you have to top it up wherever you do that underneath the boiler and the airing cupboard, these systems are closed to the atmosphere and are they're a lot more efficient at heating. They're not allowing oxygen to enter the heating system and into the water, a bit like a fish pond where you have the water flow, or you need a fish tank that drops water into the top of the water or the surface, and that captures air and puts it back in, which actually accelerates within heating systems the rusting process, because we're bringing more air into the water. But when you've got a sealed heating system, when the water starts breaking down and we bring a bit more fresh cold water in, that's when more air comes into the heating system. So we need to be mindful of that as well. But we don't tend to suffer as much with a sealed heating system with sludge and with all of that deposits than we do with an open vent. But if you do have a cold bit at the bottom and it's hot at the top, it could be that you've got poor water circulation through the boiler. And so having a look at your valves, so we've got the lock shield one side, which reduces the flow of water, and then we have your thermostat on the other. So to double check, if you do have a radiator which is cold at the bottom, make sure the valve, the thermostat valve, is fully open, and that allows us as much water through the radiator as possible without limiting the temperature from the room or its environment. Now, on the lock shield side, on the other side, it's like a bit of a typically like a sort of a flat bar. I've got one here thinking about it. And then you can, what we do to set these up is that we'll turn them off with a spanner, and then we open them turns open, normally 2 half turns, 3 half turns open, to try and balance the system. And so just make sure that these valves are fully open and the water's got an opportunity to flow through the radiator before we start calling it's a sludgy radiator. Now, if you are a DIYer out there and you do have a sludgy rag on your home, you could, if you're confident enough to do it, turn off the valves, make sure you put some caps on them, remove the radiator, take it to the garden and get a garden hose on the valve and manually flush the radiator out. you're not very confident with that, then I'd say just be a little bit careful, and you may have to call up your local and trusted heating professional. But first things first, if you've got a cold bottom, just cold bottom, there we are. Just make sure that we make sure there's enough water flow coming through the radiator in the first place. Now, if we do have cold on the top, this could be air slash some sort of gas, could be nitrogen. That's old water that's broken down and it's come up to the top of the radiator. But first things first, make sure you know if you've got a sealed heating system, you know how to top the radiator, the system pressure up. So you make sure you know where the filling loop taps are to make sure you can top it up, because when you do drop it down and you bleed it off, you will need to fill it back up. If not, the boiler will shut itself down. So there's a couple of tips there for radiators for you. And if you're finding that you've got a really, really hot radiator in one room and a Lukish warm one in another, and the TRVs are fully opened, it could be that the lock shield in the very hot room is open too wide. And the water is like a teenager, it's lazy, it's taken the path of least resistance. And we need to throttle that one back to give it more pressure onto the rest of the system. So just be mindful on that for the balancing side of the heating system. So that's really all about radiators. They're actually not that complicated really in the scheme of it all. So it's the valves that are the fiddly bits. The radiators are just big metal boxes where warm water flows through. So what should we do this winter with our outside taps? Now, I've got a couple of bits in a box here. So your outside tap, if it's been fitted properly, will have a valve. Now, typically, this is the sort of size that you'd normally be dealing with. Typically, an under sink cupboard environment, you'll see from the tap, the pipe should be very minimal, going straight through the wall. And if you follow that through, hopefully you'll have some sort of valve. Now, not typically this big, but it may be this type with like a screwdriver sort of type flathead operation. So what I would do is I would, got my outside tap here, I've got one. I'd make sure we open the tap up and the water's flowing. Just get it flowing just a little bit so we can say, right, okay, that's flowing, then go inside. Now, if you've got this sort of valve, you can just literally twist it quarter turn with your fingers, and these are the sort of the valves that we fit here at Gaslec. They're a lot more user friendly. They've got a very small bore in them. For the purists out there, yes it is, but it's an outside tap or a kitchen tap. It's not, we don't need massive maximum water flows through it. But if you've got one of these type, turn that off to that across the pipe position, and then we should see our outside tap water best part stop, or may go down to a bit of a drip. And once you do that, just then fully open the tap, and you'll feel it and it'll stop. Then bring it back just half a turn so it's fully open. And with this valve being off and that being fully open, any of the exposed pipe work or within the body of the tap itself, any water that's in here will start to freeze. The water, as it freezes, will expand, and that's what causes your burst pipes. So get that water turned off to your outside tap, and then that will then protect it. And if you do have sort of the screwdriver type, you turn the screwdriver completely 90 degrees across the pipe work. These will rotate round and round, so just make sure you get it nice and true as it comes across, and then open the tap up and then double check that as well. But that's the best thing. Get your outside taps isolated and turned fully open, but not on the full stop. Bring them back half a turn and just leave them like that for the winter period. And if you do need to use it during the winter, then you just need to turn the tap off, turn the valve off, turn the valve on, then go back in and do the whole process again if you do need to do that. So if you've got a heating system with 3-port valves, so if you've got, so the way a gravity system works with like a 3-port valve is that it doesn't use the valve for hot water. So we get calls coming in this time of year saying, I've got plenty of hot water. When I turn the heating on, it's not really working that well or doesn't work at all. Now, it's to do with the micro switches in the 3-port, and it powers it over. And when it gets to its on position, it clicks the micro switches to turn on for demand for the boiler. Now, as an emergency, if you then get a problem and you can't get any heat in and it's absolutely freezing outside and you want to fire it up, I've got a fantastic little tip for you. So what you do is you turn on your hot water demand as you would normally. Now this is a Dunfos 2-port head or 3-port head, doesn't really matter. This is very similar to the Honeywell one as well, but I didn't have one to hand. So we have this little lever here, and it's like a spring-loaded lever. And you can probably see that, and then just it'll spring back there all on its own. So when you're using on your 3-port, you're using your hot water, and you're demanding your hot water. If we then bring that over to that manual position, it might be a bit difficult to see, but there's like a little lock position just there, and that will actually hold open the valve into the heating position. So you've got your hot water on demand because it's just the way it switches, but you've now forcing the water down the heating pipes instead. Now you will have to manually turn this back to create your hot water, it going through the coil for your demand. So it's actually you're actually doing this manually, but this will get you out of a bit of a pickle, especially if it's Christmas Day or a couple of days over the Christmas period and you can't get out your local trusted person to actually get this fixed for you. So demand your hot water, manually lock it over, and that'll get your heating working temporarily while you get yourself out of the situation. And then what I would say is that if you did have a call out on Christmas Day for something like this, I'd say don't panic. Do this for a couple of days, because if you call someone out on Christmas Day, I've been listening to other podcasts where they want to charge £1,500 to coming out on Christmas Day to do a job like this. Wait until the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, and then pay normal prices. Don't pay these massively extended costs if you don't actually have to. Also, be mindful about these, the companies that you may have not have heard of. They may have a local phone number and you may have someone local, fairly local, that comes round, but ultimately now you're dealing with almost like a broker. We haven't been approached by any because I'll tell them where to go myself, but there are people out there that they will sign up to this brokerage thing and then they'll want to take and charge out massive. Actually, it happened to my cousin. Actually, I was actually on holiday in Wales. He had a problem with one of his rentals. He calls up this company he thought was local, was actually based, I think, in North London. A guy comes out, charges him a call-out fee and a diagnostics fee. The diagnostics was the cylinder's leaking. It didn't take a rocket science to stand there. So you got charged double bubble for that. Didn't even fit a lever to isolate it. Turned off the cold mains to the whole flat. They couldn't even flush the toilet. Now we went in there. Well, I actually went in on the way back and fitted a 6, 7, £10 lever valve for him so they could have the water back on that afternoon. They didn't even do that. And the words for the guy would be really, really expensive if we fit a valve to that pipe work. They were already charging nearly £300 for the call out because he called them out on a Sunday. So just be mindful of these companies that may appear. Go on to your Checker Trades, not Checker Trades, sorry, I don't like them. Go on to your like Which Trusted Trader. Go on to your, in Kent here we have the Kent County Council or the Medway Council trusted traders sort of lists. Go on to those. Be mindful of your Checker Trades. Be mindful of your Trusted Trader. Those types. Those schemes there. They're like a leads websites, and all you do is you pay money. No one really gets checked on them that well. I had a big battle with Checkatrade to come off of the system, and they tied me in for another year of contract. And I said, well, the longer you keep me in, the more times I'm going to tell people that what actually you're up to and what the scheme's all about. So I don't trust anything about Checkatrade. But the Which magazine, Trusted Trader, were in that. Very, very rigorous. But yeah, call someone up, speak to your local heating professional. If you've just moved into an area, get contact some local trades that you can build some sort of relationship up with, and ask for recommendations from friends and families and neighbours as well, because most people have called us out, one of us plumbers out before as well. So, right, let's get this boxed out. So, last week, so I'm recording this on Sunday evening. I was actually away for the Friday, Saturday. I was up in Birmingham for the motorbike show. So, when I was doing a job, what day was it? Must have been Thursday, I think it was. We got called out for a smell of gas. So it was one of my neighbours round the corner, and she done really well, and she thought she smelled gas, so she went into the cupboard and she found where the gas meter was, and she turned off the gas lever. And down here in Kent, we use Southern Gas Networks, and all of the gas emergency service down in the whole of this UK is 0800 111 999. So whatever your emergency call out for your service provider is in your area, but that'll be the one phone number for them. And she turned the gas off, and they come out and they were doing some sniff testing. Oh, it's around this. It's around this. Coupling. There was a few couplings where we had the boiler was moved 3 years ago when she had Bod the builder come and do a loft conversion with a gas safe installer to help move the boiler. Now I'm extremely doubting whether this guy, fairly local still trading as a loft conversion specialist, was actually using a gas engineer or gas safe engineer to do the work. We had the condense pipe coming down from the boiler, coming to the old location, and then coming through, and that was coming out in 22mm speed fit, not overflow or condense pipe at 21.5. So that was coming down in a water pipe, and then where the gas pipe popped up, I've got it on my Facebook page if you want to go and have a look at it on the Gaslec Kent one, and then the condense pipe come down. It was all too tight. So he had a leak. We couldn't actually get I presume it's a he, couldn't actually get the pipe work on properly. So he wrapped it in PTFE tape and a bit of blue electrical tape. But what actually happened, that condensed water was slowly dripping onto the gas pipe, which would run down the side. And it actually then created a pinhole, and the condensed water, which is acidic, like a vinegar, which eats into metallic slowly, ate into the copper pipe. And then we had a proper gas leak. But if you check out my Facebook page, I've got some pictures of that up, and you can see that there. So we're going back. All the condense pipe went down the outside the house in 21.5mm, went to the ground, and it was literally just sitting above the ground. When you saw the clients, it's like an end of terrace. You see the brickwork alongside the house is like a big sort of dark mould patch of damp where the boiler's producing condensed water, and it's not actually being managed properly and correctly. So we've got a quote to do for next week of actually managing that water properly, and we'll upgrade it all to 40mm pipe, and we'll take it around and we'll bring it into the soil stack, the plastic stack, and we'll do it correctly. Because the customer did actually have, I think it was last year, the pipe freeze. So which then leads into my next topic about condense pipes freezing. So she had an undersized 21.5mm condense pipe coming down in its vertical about 10mm from the floor, and it had frozen over, it had backed up, and it had come up all the way up to the pipe, and then the boiler basically couldn't breathe. So these Worcester Green Stars, they're a downward firing boiler. So as it fired down, then the water come up, filled up the trap, come up the pipework, and then it couldn't, because now it's created a water trap at the bottom of the sump. And now you start hearing the boiler going blah, 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 blah. Them sort of rackets and noises. And you go, I can hear loads of bubbling. And then the boiler will turn itself off. Massive levels of carbon monoxide for a brief amount of time. And then fan obviously blows that outside. So she had that problem already, and then someone had come along and put like a pipe lagging on the outside to try and stop it from freezing. That should all be upgraded to 40mm pipe outside, and that massively reduces, certainly here in the southeast, of the likelihood of pipes freezing. But if it does freeze, you can temporarily speak to your local gas safe installer. Because there are traps within the boiler, you can actually remove the pipe and actually then put that into a bucket temporarily whilst you get the pipe thawed, or you get your local plumber out to get that done. There are stuff on the internet about using warm water and kettles over outside pipework to melt the end of it, and that is quite a laborious task, to be honest, because you need to go to the end where the termination comes out, and then work your way up, but you don't know where the blockage is. So it's a very difficult thing to sort of do, to put warm water up a pipe. It's certainly, if it's a good length outside. The rerun of this pipe is going to be about it's going to be about 4 or 5 lengths of 3 meter. So it's going to be a good run of pipe. And imagine doing that at a height with a warm water, trying to find out where it's blocked, because you get one piece and it's blocked. Yeah, so the whole thing's just a nightmare. So when I spoke to Gaslec before, that's okay for a short amount of time. And obviously just be mindful about pets, because it is acidic water, so cats and dogs start to drink out of it as well. So that was the bit there for us homeowners, or you homeowners out there. So guys, you're new in the industry, you're working along somebody else, or you're just starting out on your own. We're into what we sometimes us call silly season, which is this mad rush of winter. What van stock should you be carrying? So I like to think about it is that we want to try and get out to the client to cover most jobs first time without going backwards and forwards. It's more cost to the client, and it's actually more time that we can't then go off and see another client and build a new relationship with somebody else as well. And as the business owner, that's how I like to see it. So I like to try and I'll read through the jobs the day or the day before, a couple of days before, and try and have a bit of an idea of who the customer is. Have we been there before? Have got any memory of it? Got any history on the job? What could be the situation that's causing this problem? And so, like when we're looking at like 2 ports and 3 ports, that sort of no hot water or loads of hot water, no heating, that sort of water management stuff on sort of like heat only boilers or system boilers. Is it a combi boiler and they've got no hot water, or it's it's cutting out, or it's very low water? If we've got a problem with a plate, well, a flow turbine, you turn the hot water on, does anything happen to the boiler? Nothing fires up, nothing lights up. Is it a flow turbine issue? Some sort of Hall effect sensor, whichever the manufacturer want to call these different things. So looking at flow sensors, we're looking at thermistors. We start looking at 2 ports, 3 ports, start looking at pumps to sort of really get a bit of an idea. And one of the little things I do like to carry on the van as well is a magnet. So I've got some quite big, strong magnets here at Gaslec. And what I like to do is stick it onto, where you've got the H that comes down, the fill and vent, so it comes up from the boiler across and down to the pump, then off to the 2 or the 3 ports. You normally have a 1522 coming down for your fill and vent from there. Now, yes, solder is a little bit on the magnetic side, yes, because of all the stuff that's in it. But if you can get a magnet, you can then start feeling that pull on the pipe as it comes round on that sort of that double T as it comes round. I've actually got heating systems working just by rubbing my magnet over the top of the H, and actually disturbed the magnetite that's built up, which is magnetic, and got things flowing and actually got it working. So I do actually like to use that technique. Other things that we'll use, obviously, radiator valves, TRVs, drain offs, automatic air vents. If you get the 3/4 ones, you could use those with an adapter onto normal pipework, or the 3/4 ones are very common in Worcester boilers on their inside there for their AAVs. Thumb vents, burner gasket seals for Worcesters, the G10 seals for the Valent for the stainless steel heat exchangers. Quite a few of these different type of things. The backseat little temperature sensors that always go in the Geotex, those little red ones. Getting those changed over. That fell on the floor. But yeah, getting those, carrying a bit of a stock of things that we can try, even down to what we started doing is when we pull out an old boiler and we have a few sensors that are not critical to the safety of the boiler, but we can use that as a bit of, if we know their work, we can use that as a bit of fault finding elimination, and keep some of those old bits on your van into little packets with a GC number written on them. And you can say, we put that in and it still did that. So it's not the Hall effect sensor or we did this, we did that. So it may be able to help you out there. So try and carry as much van stock as you can, and have a chat with your local merchants if you've got a an account with them. You may be able to carry a bit more stock over the Christmas period and then get it returned before the 1st of January so they can take it off your account, the stuff you haven't used. But you've got it on your vans and stock. And I've certainly done this over the years with boilers. I've had a few boilers into stock, not needed them for the emergency installs, and actually return them come like sort of New Year's Eve, that sort of time when they've been open and they have not actually gone through and landed on my account properly. So it's a really good way of, make sure you get a really good relationship with your local merchant now. So another little tip I've got as the last sort of subject really to talk about is, so you're new coming into the industry, is all about speaking with clients. So some of the biggest complaints we get here at Gaslec, and I think across the board, I don't think we're any different here, is about communication. And what's about communication is, it was 5 minutes late, it was 5 minutes early, no one turned up today, I said that he needed this and he didn't turn up with that, whatever it'll be. When you boil it all down, go down to the bones of it all, it's usually down to communication. So we've got a new piece of software by Powered Now, so we can push the button to tell the customers that we're on our way, and if we're 5, 10, 15, 25 minutes away, off of Google Maps, which has really helped cut down on the phone calls. So the customer can log in, click on the link, and it'll come up if it's an AM or PM appointment. And they can actually bring those times up, and they can actually review their own appointment and the notes that are on there as well. And then when we're on our way, push the button. That really has helped it. But communicating with the client, or what are we doing, what are we looking for, asking them, so how does your heating system normally work? How do you normally get your hot water to work? I push this, this, and this. Absolutely fantastic. And it usually does that, and it normally takes this amount of time, it normally gurgles over there or whatever it does, but always ask them and go off and do what they do, or ask them to do it and then watch what they do and then follow their process through. And then that can then help us then do the diagnosis, but then just keep the customer informed. Actually, what happens is when we demand the hot water, that then comes through and that opens that switch over there, and then we're doing the heating and it's not doing it. What's the problem? Is there a timer issue? Is the timer got the correct time? Is it 12 hours out and it thinks it's 4 in the morning, not 4 in the afternoon? Simple things like that. It can be. Is the thermostat clicking? So they're doing all of that, and the thermostat's just not right. The knob's been pulled off, the knob's broken, they've turned it around too far, and it's snapped the little thing that goes onto the spindle. And just sort of have a bit of a step back on it and go through, but communicate with the client. And that's the biggest and the best bit of advice I could give any new person out there. Good communication. And as we're starting to see sort of the young people coming into the industry, it is a bit of a lost skill that we are seeing. Us old sweats here, born in the 70s, that's how we had to communicate with people. We didn't have anything electronic, and we had to do it that way. But you young guys coming through, born in the sort of 2000s onwards, you grew up with iPhones and messaging and WhatsApp and stuff like that. We didn't grow that. So, if you really want to stand out, be a great communicator and a great explainer, being able to explain things correctly. Apologies for my dyslexia there. So thank you very much indeed, guys. That wraps up this week's episode. So thank you very much indeed for listening and for watching. Now, if you know one person out there that could benefit from a DIYer, if you know someone that owns their own business and they want to invest into a new bit of technology for heating hot water or upgrades, or if you know a young person that's interested into DIY, if you could share this pod with them, this podcast, get them to message me in, and I'll read all my emails for the podcast. Email us in at podcast@gaslec.net. And bring any questions in, and I'll get them answered. You need anything explained, I'll get that done too. Not a problem at all. It's a podcast that I feel really sort of passionate about. It's Sunday afternoon, mid-afternoon. I forget what the time is now. Was it 2:45 on a Sunday? I'll come in my own time to do this because I'm really passionate about the podcast and helping people out there. So have a fantastic week. All the best. Goodbye.